Thanks for joining us here on Indivisible. I'm your host, John Stubbins. We're thrilled to have you with us today, America. This is the show where we put God, faith, family, and country first, and we will always tell you the truth. Make sure that you go to indivisibleevents.us. You can donate there. You can sign up for our website, follow the show, follow our events, plus all of our streaming partners, and also all of our partners that we do other events and also charity work with. So you can also follow Defending Republic, defendingtherepublic.org, fair and transparent elections there, My Pillow, our sponsors, and all of our streaming partners, whether it be PatriotTV.live, Clout Hub, we just added Gab, Spreely, Pill.net, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of them. And we do need your generous donations for our investigations to keep the show alive. So please do that. Again, indivisibleevents.us. Again, thanks for joining us today. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to get right to it. So you look at what we're at, and everybody has Afghanistan, the border, CRT, the virus, all these different things going on. Meanwhile, we have an administration that has gone soft on China. The Chinese are the CCP militarization is going upscale. We've got the South China Sea. We've got all these different things. The Wuhan lab, which the Peter Danzig story and Fauci connected to the CCP. All of these different things going on, and we cannot take our eyes off the ball regarding China, because that is not going anywhere, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So Biden's not going to do anything about it, and we also have Austin and Milley, who they appear to be bought and paid for as much as Congress and our sports world, Hollywood, the NBA, all these different things. These people are bought and paid for by China. They seem to do anything that they say, and they forget that it's America that provides the success to all these people. And we've got to keep our eye on that. And with that in mind, I'm going to bring on my friend Gordon Chang. How you doing, Gordon?
I'm fine, John. How are you?
Good to see you. I want to get right into this with Afghanistan and Iran. China is going over to Afghanistan and Iran. They're going to be partnering with them now that we've left that vacuum.
Yes, certainly. And, we've seen China now provide food and other aid because Afghanistan, which is heading into the winter, is going to go through a very difficult period. Multilateral institutions have closed their accounts of Afghanistan, which means that they don't have access to their funds. China is going to step in and basically, I think, be the main financial backer for the Taliban. The one thing, John, that we have to ask is during the insurgency, where was the Taliban getting its money? It was probably getting it from China. We know that China was selling small arms to the Taliban, and they were using that against NATO and American forces, which means that China was participating in the killing of Americans. And we know that some of those weapons actually were quite significant because, for instance, they were supplying anti-aircraft missiles in addition to the small arms. So we've got to remember that China has been on the wrong side of this from the beginning. We should not be cooperating with China in the reconstruction of Afghanistan. If someone's got to pay for it, let Beijing pay for it, because the Taliban is going to be using its space to help terrorists attack the U.S.
Yeah. And, thinking about that relationship, it seems to me.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. It seems to me like the Biden administration not only has gone soft, but that Austin and Milley, that they're bought and paid for by China.
Well, clearly after the fall of Afghanistan, the Biden administration took a new posture towards China, and it really is much softer than it was before. And I think part of it is because of John Kerry. John Kerry wants an enhanced climate deal with China. They're heading into COP26, which is the global climate conference in Glasgow. And I think that, Kerry has basically won the day in the White House, so that essentially the United States is not going to be opposing China, except for perhaps on trade issues. But across the important issues, we're going to give China what it wants. And we already did that, for instance, with the release of Meng Wanzhou, who was the chief financial officer of Huawei Technologies. That was really the wrong move for the U.S. And it really showed that Biden was basically doing everything that Xi Jinping wanted.
Let me ask you this, Gordon. What's going on with the rapid militarization of China, also in the South China Sea? What's going on there right now?
Beijing wants to control not only its periphery, but as it's told us, it wants to rule the world. And so it is building fastest military buildup in history, or at least the fastest one since the buildup of the Third Reich's military. So we're seeing right now a very dangerous situation where Chinese generals and admirals are getting what they want. They are building a military that is more than just for China's defense. And we got to be concerned that we have seen this dynamic before.
Do you anticipate anything happening soon, like even with Taiwan?
It's always a possibility, John. There are a lot of reasons why Beijing would not decide to invade Taiwan. But there's also, from our perspective, we view them as sort of acting along the same lines as we would. There are some dynamics in the Chinese capital, in the political circles, that really force China to do things that could take us by surprise. So, although I don't think that Beijing right now is planning to invade Taiwan, I say that we have to be prepared for it. And there's one other thing. We got to talk about accidents. This is not just a question of setting out a large-scale invasion of Taiwan. There could be a dangerous accident in, for instance, the Taiwan Strait that leads to history's next great conflict. Remember, China is intercepting the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force in the global commons. These incidents are dangerous. One of them could go wrong. We could see, for instance, all sorts of things that could occur after one of those accidents.
What kind of accident do you anticipate, just as an example?
Well, for instance, there was already one on April 1st, 2001, where a Chinese jet clipped the wing of a U.S. Navy EP-3, which is an unarmed reconnaissance plane. That forced the EP-3 to land in Hainan. And there, the Chinese stripped the plane and imprisoned the crew. And to, I believe, the internal shame of George W. Bush, he even offered to pay a ransom to release our aviators. And he certainly did not impose any costs on China for a violation of our sovereignty, which was taking the equipment off the EP-3. So when we look at all of this, this has happened before. And we have taught the Chinese to be aggressive, that we will do nothing to impose costs for these dangerous accidents or near incidents. You know, we went through and endured a lot of this with the Soviets, and thank God we didn't have a conflict. But the Chinese are as aggressive or more aggressive than the Soviets were.
Absolutely.
And it's not just incidents with us. It could be incidents with Taiwan's Air Force. We see almost daily incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. The last one was 26 planes a few hours ago, including nuclear-capable H-6K bombers.
Yes, and make sure that if you haven't read the book, make sure you get Gordon's book, The Coming Collapse of China, and get that and read that. I think you'll find that a great read. I wanted to ask you about North Korea's new missile.
Yeah, this is the Hwasong-8. It was tested last Tuesday. It's a hypersonic missile. South Korea telemetry says it flew at Mach 2.5, which for a hypersonic missile is really slow, but it's really fast for missiles in general. And the question we have to ask is that, where did the North Koreans get the technology for their hypersonic missile? It's really unlikely they developed it on its own. I'm sure they got it from China. We have seen, for instance, North Korean missiles that are based on Chinese missiles, like the Chinese JL-2 submarine launch missile. The North Koreans have a variant of that. So the United States needs to start imposing some costs on Beijing for these very dangerous technology transfers.
Have you gotten wind of anything else that North Korea might be employing, or is it just this one missile so far?
Well, yeah, we've had a series of North Korean missile tests. there were 2 cruise missile tests. There was a ballistic missile test. There was the Hwasong 8 test. And there was an anti-aircraft missile test a day ago. So there is a lot of activity going on. There was a long period of quiet during the Trump administration. And President Trump said, well, this was because of the diplomacy, and that very well may have been true. But the North Koreans were continuing their missile and nuclear weapons development all during that period where, it looked like things were going well. And what the North Koreans have decided to do is 2 things. I think that they, first of all, need to test their missiles to verify their designs. But also, I think they're testing the reaction of the Biden administration, because they believe that the Biden team is just distracted by all sorts of events, both internal and external. And so the North Koreans are seeing how far they can get away with things.
Sure. Yeah. And I would do the same thing militarily. If you're going after an opponent, what else would you do?
That makes a lot of sense. So right now, the Biden administration wants to talk to the North Koreans, which is really the wrong thing. The only way we're going to make progress with North Korea is, first of all, tighten sanctions on North Korea, but also start imposing really strict sanctions on China. China has been openly violating UN rules on trade with North Korea, and the U.S. has done nothing. Trump administration did nothing in its last year or so, and the Biden administration is doing nothing. So, of course, the Chinese are going to continue with this behavior. And North Korea is not going to deal with the international community in good faith as long as it's got China's backing.
Sure. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Gordon Chang. By now, you've all heard me talk about Mike and his great products. Well, guess what? Mike's now introduced his MyPillow My Slippers, which are fantastic. Great on my feet, soft as can be. I love them. Mike's taken over 2 years to develop these slippers. He's designed them to wear indoor or outdoor all day, all night long. Made with MyPillow foam and impact gel to help prevent fatigue. Made with quality leather suede. For a limited time, Mike is offering 40% off his new My Slippers. The My Slippers are so comfortable, you're going to want to get them for the whole family. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square and use promo code INDIVISIBLE. You'll also get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, and MyPillow towel sets. Or call 1-800-716-4639 and enter Indivisible as your promo code. We're back with Gordon Chang. Gordon, I want to talk a little bit about the China supply chain and the disruptions there, and how we can stop that. Obviously, is by making goods in the United States.
Yeah, the big solution here is that we just don't buy from China, that we locate manufacturing either in the United States or countries very close to us. And let me give you an example of how we can benefit, even if we don't bring factories back to American soil. We've got migrants from the Northern Triangle, from Central America. Those societies were destabilized when factories moved to China. If we bring factories back there, those societies become stable, and then they don't send migrants up through Mexico and pressure our southern border. So we would do a lot better if we had our manufacturing capability close to us. One other thing, John, we have an administration that believes climate change is the most important threat to humanity. Well, 15 of those very large container ships create as much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as all the world's cars. So if we weren't shipping stuff across the Pacific, we'd have much cleaner air.
Sure.
And for an administration that says it wants to prevent climate change, it needs to take a note of this and do something about it. Bring our factories back.
Great point, and I'm fully on board with that. Made in America is the way to go. That's a great point, Gordon. I want to also ask you about this thing about China's population halving over the next 45 years. What's that about?
Yeah, China is going to go through the steepest population decline in history in the absence of war or disease. China claims it now has a total fertility rate of 1.3. That's the average number of children per female of childbearing age. But it probably has a TFR of 0.9 or maybe at the most 1.0. Replacement is 2.1 for most societies. For China, it might be a little higher because of of child mortality. But the point is, once you start doing the arithmetic, it says that China, which has a population of 1.41 billion as of last November and December, probably will have a population of 700 million by, let's say, 2065. That's a
Wow.
study that was done by Chinese demographers and was just released a day or so ago. But if you start to do the arithmetic out to the end of the century, it means that China probably will have about the same population as the United States.
Interesting. Interesting. And why do you think that is? Just because of the birth rate only, or anything
Well, it's
else?
birth rate only. Yeah, it's birth rate. China had a one-child policy through the end of 2015.
Right.
It became a two-child policy. That didn't work to stimulate births. Now they've got a three-child policy, which also is not going to work. It's just a simple question of you take the total fertility rate and you start doing a little bit of arithmetic. And it shows that China is going to lose a substantial portion of its population. Now, demography is not fixed. It can change, but no Chinese demographer sees that there will be an increase in births anytime soon. And by the way, COVID-19, which affected American demography, it lowered our birth rate, has certainly lowered China's. And the Chinese demographers who did this study say they don't think that China's birth rate is going to increase even after the pandemic is finished.
Wow. So people just aren't having babies over there. I guess that's how we can surmise that.
Yes, and part of it is because people there are not optimistic, so they're just not having children.
Gotcha. I want to talk about the rationing of electricity to the smaller factories in China. Why is that happening over there?
That's a great question, and we really don't know the answer of why all of a sudden China has these great power outages. Many people say that it's the coal. There's been, for instance, these political disagreements with Australia, so they're not buying Australian coal, so they don't have enough coal, so they have to ration electricity. But the one thing that we know, John, that whatever is going on here, Beijing is using this to prejudice and disadvantage smaller producers. There's a three-category system that all factories have been put under: A, B, and C. If you're A factory, you lose power for maybe a day or two a week. But if you're in the C category, you're getting power only for 10 days a month.
I saw that.
So really what this is, the C factories are the smaller ones, which are the most productive. They're the heart of China's export sector. China's doing this to help ailing state enterprises, which are large.
Okay. Well, I'd like to let's continue to cover that story, because I'm interested to find out more about that. That seems very interesting to me. In regards to the Wuhan lab, you and I've had many discussions about Peter Danzig and Fauci and the CCP general. Where are we with that right now? Any updates?
Well, the one update is that despite everything, we are still funding 7 military-linked chat labs in China that are doing biology research, which is absolutely crazy. What we've learned is that the National Institutes of Health, and specifically Dr. Fauci's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, was funding coronavirus research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And although Fauci, in his Senate testimony in May and July of this year, said, oh, no, he wasn't funding any coronavirus gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute. There are 2 papers from 2016 and 2017 that talk about gain-of-function research on coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And both of those papers mention funding from Dr. Fauci's institute.
In relation to Hollywood and pro sports, I mentioned Austin and Millie earlier, but these politicians in Congress, they seem to be bought and paid for by China, and it doesn't seem to matter what we do. They seem to be on this China kick, and America last.
China exploits every point of contact with our society, and our society is just being overwhelmed by China. Our FBI is overwhelmed, local law enforcement is overwhelmed, local governments, federal government, they're all overwhelmed. And if we're going to keep our society, what we're going to have to do is cut those contacts with China until we can be sure that we can manage through this. But China's malicious. They've made it clear that they want to remove our democracy. They want to take away our freedoms. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has actually talked about ruling the world. So we have no choice. If we're going to defend ourselves, we've got to get China out of our society. I know this is drastic, but we're not going to be able to keep our country if we don't get China's regime out of us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Gordon, if we can't do that, then we're gonna end up bowing to China, which is not what America's values and standards are built on. So I'm with you 100%. God bless you, my friend. Send my love to Lydia, and looking forward to having you back soon.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon, Gordon. God bless. That was Gordon Chang, and we need to cover China. Like I said at the beginning of my opening, we need to continue to stay on that because that's not going away. And if we forget about that, then we're taking the ball off of an enemy that is coming after us in a huge way, and they've been doing so for a very, very long time. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will be joined by Jason Fyk. He is the foremost expert on censorship and Section 230, and you're not going to want to miss it. Big news, America. Mike is bringing back the pillow offer for just $29.98. They're the softest pillows. They don't go flat. Wash them and dry them as many times as you like, and they still keep their shape. And they're made in America. Mike is offering his premium My Pillows at his lowest price ever. Queen size for $29.98, regularly $69.98. That's a $40 savings. And king size, only $5 more. Go to mypillow.com and enter the promo code INDIVISIBLE for my show. Or call 1-800-716-4639 and give them the code INDIVISIBLE for my show, and you're going to get huge savings. At the height of his social media career, Jason Fyk built an audience in excess of 38 million followers, only to have them unlawfully stripped away. In 2018, Jason sued Facebook for anti-competitive misconduct and took his case all the way to the Supreme Court. Although his case was wrongfully dismissed, and the Supreme Court denied his petition to be heard, Fyk was undeterred. And as a result of the courts denying proper due process, Fyk founded the Social Media Freedom Foundation, who will be filing a Fifth Amendment constitutional challenge against the United States regarding Section 230 on behalf of all Americans. And I want to bring onto the show now Jason Fyk. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, John. How are you, sir?
Good. It's I tell you, it's a busy news day with everything that's going on, but I'm glad that you're here, brother. I want to dive right into this because I know that you have a lot to talk about, and while we're doing that, I want to also show we've got some of these, and I want to first show this. This is socialmediafreedom.org, which is the Social Media Freedom Foundation that Jason started to go after big tech. You'll see it scrolling at the bottom as well. Again, that's socialmediafreedom.org, and we'll talk more about that. But I also want to show this. This is 47 U.S. Code, Section 230, protection for private blocking and screening of offensive material. And the Good Samaritan Law, a law exempting from liability physicians or others who aid strangers in grave physical distress. Carter held that a private entity may not be entrusted with the power to regulate the business of another, and especially a competitor. Any statute which attempts to confer such power undertakes an intolerable and unconstitutional interference with personal liberty and private property. The delegation is so clearly arbitrary and a denial of due process. And I wanted to show those because I know that you want to talk about that and get into that today, Jason. So let's get into these bullet points right away. Stopping big tech, what you don't know about Section 230. And I'm talking about the audience, Americans, just average Americans that are using social media that may not understand the ramifications behind this. And again, Jason, excuse me, Jason had 38 million followers on Facebook, unpublished 14 million, and restored for competitor lawsuit in the Supreme Court of the United States. And I know you want to talk about it, so I'm going to let you have the floor.
Thanks, John. You sort of put a lot out there to unpack right out of the gate. So here's the situation. We, for those that don't know, I sued Facebook for anti-competitive misconduct. A lot of people misunderstood even what my case was about, but it is purely about the way that they handle materials isn't necessarily protected by Section 230. The problem is that the courts just have not actually read the law for what it says. In fact, Justice Thomas said very, very similar. He said that the courts have long since departed from the most logical reading of the text. So the courts have converted this one law that a lot of people have heard about, but they don't really understand into things that it is not. I mean, a lot of what you hear is that Section 230 is a protection for the First Amendment. I'm sure you've heard that one before.
Sure.
But anybody that understands law, even in a modest way, understands that the First Amendment is ensured by the Constitution. You have a First Amendment no matter what. There is no law that is required to protect it. What does it do? It doesn't protect the First Amendment. Section 230 protects from civil liability. So what that means is that, and I'm trying to sort of make this simplified for people. Please. Essentially, what happens is the government said, "Hey, look, we have got to give," and you read the actual statute name, which is 47 U.S. Code Section 230, quote, protection for private blocking and screening of offensive materials. So the private entity has a First Amendment right either way. They could put content up, they could take content down, but they would be subject to liability. Section 230 only removes that liability aspect. Okay, that's all it does. And what does it do? Well, it allows them to do one thing. And this is the misconception. The first part of the law is a matter of treatment. It's essentially like an instruction. They cannot be treated as someone else. The courts have confused that into they cannot be treated as themselves as publishers. That's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. Because, of course, if you can't be treated as a publisher under the first portion, the second portion where they become a publisher, which is to remove content, would already be immune. You wouldn't need that law. And that creates what they call a statutory conflict. Essentially, there's no point in having the second law. Courts don't want to address that. That's the actual language. So what happened was, in my circumstances, the courts decided to come along and they said, well, you can't treat them as a publisher. And we said, well, I'm holding them accountable for what they did, not for my content. They're two totally separate things. Courts decided to throw it all out. Said, okay. Went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court decided not to hear it. We could have solved Section 230 problems a long time ago, back in like January, February, March.
Sure.
But the Supreme Court didn't hear the case. So then there's another case, Enigma versus Malwarebytes, that came up. And it's funny because you'll see a lot of these tech lawyers completely dismiss that case as some sort of oddball, red herring, whatever you want to call it. No, it's brilliant. it calls into question exactly what it is. If the conduct of the company is specifically acting for their own benefit, it can't be protected under Section 230. And everybody says, well, that's not in the law. Well, actually, it is. If you look at 230C, which is prior to 230C1, 230C2, and for those that know, it's written like an outline, what does it say? Protection for Good Samaritan blocking and screening of offensive material, right? Well, I want to unpack this for you because it's right there, right in front of everybody, and nobody's paying attention to this. And it's funny because I can stump. And if you want a good little trick, anybody that starts to start lawyer-splaining to you Section 230, ask them this. Why are there quotes on Good Samaritan and why is it capitalized? And you ask yourself, wait a second. You're right. Why is it? And inevitably, they don't know. Do you know that there's an actual reason, John? And the reason is incredibly important. So what happens is that when Congress ever writes a law that allows any entity the ability to restrict your life, liberty, or property, they must articulate an intelligible principle. The quotes are the articulation. They are saying Good Samaritan is the intelligible principle upon which all of the regulations must be based.
Right.
So you ask yourself, what's a Good Samaritan? Well, you just read that for us. Good Samaritan law, I mean, fundamentally, it's very easy to understand Good Samaritan law. It must be for the good of others, not for themselves, right?
I'll put it back up.
That's to render help to someone else. Well, and that you can't be held liable if you render help to someone else. So if you look back at what happened to me, do you think that removing my content for their own financial gain is helping someone else, or is it helping themselves? It fundamentally fails right at the gate. Right. Good Samaritan, boom, you're done. It's out. And that's what Enigma stumbled upon. They said that the Good Samaritan provision, which is the intelligible principle, does not immunize blocking and filtering decisions that are based upon an anti-competitive animus. Meaning, if you weren't acting as a Good Samaritan, it doesn't matter what you did. I don't care if you're a publisher. So it doesn't matter if you aren't a publisher.
Right out of the gate, like you said.
What do you think Snapchat was all about? Snapchat had gross negligence, contributory negligence involved. Are you a Good Samaritan if you're enticing people to go faster and end up running into trees and stuff and killing themselves? No, that was stupid. That's not rendering help. That was to your own benefit that you wanted a bigger platform, so you did things you weren't supposed to do. And the courts are starting to get it. Now, that's one problem, right? That's the textual problems that the courts have. But the courts did something else to me. They denied me of my day in court. And some people say, well, I lost. Well, I didn't lose. I wasn't even heard. I literally have not been in front of a single judge. Although I'm right, because the courts have literally proven that I'm right in another case. So I never got a day in court.
Why do you think that is, Jason?
Because I think they're protecting them. Legitimately, either they are completely confused and not listening, because we laid it out. If you read our Supreme Court cert, any lawyer can understand exactly what the problem is. It is dead in line with what Justice Clarence Thomas noted in his Enigma denial of cert. That's unheard of. Like, no justice has ever written a 10-page analysis of a law in a denial of cert. It just doesn't happen. And everybody said, well, it's just fleeting, what do they call it? Obiter dictum. No, it's not a fleeting comment. It was a thoughtful analysis, and it's identical to our lawsuit. So, but let me ask you something. When you put content online, this content that you're making right now, who owns that? Isn't that your property?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you put it online, is that not your choice? That's what you wanted to do.
That's right.
So arguably, that's your liberty and your property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Very simple. Section 230 allows a private entity. Now, they can do it anyhow because of the First Amendment. They can actually remove your content. They could interfere with your liberty. That's cool. But the problem is the government can't protect that action. That's where everything starts to fall apart for them, because what most people don't understand, and this is huge, because the government denied me a day in court, I have now not only been hurt by Facebook, I have now been hurt by the U.S. government.
Right.
Congress wrote a law that that basically protects a company from committing an illegal offense. That's a problem. They have denied me of my liberty. They have denied me of my property, and I cannot seek redress. Do you know what happens when any entity is authorized or delegated the authority to be able to restrict your life, liberty, or property? You are subject to due process. You are allowed a day in court.
I would think so.
So we looked, and my legal team have been at this, and I mean, this has all been on me. I have gotten virtually no help out of the world. And I want to go back through the quote of the Carter quote. Carter versus Carter coal mining was a 1936 coal mining case. And what essentially had happened is that the Congress had granted the coal mining industry the ability to self-regulate. And what they said was, if you're a larger company, you have more delegates. If you're a smaller company, you have less delegates. Well, inevitably, the delegates started regulating to the benefit of the bigger companies. Kind of sounds like a couple of companies we know, right?
Right.
That they would, because I'm in the same business as Facebook. To be clear, I've even said that in our complaint. I am an advertiser that takes money for advertising and marketing. If they wipe me out to help my competitor to make more money because I'm not advertising with them, they're my direct competition. They are wholly in it. So if we look at what Carter held, this is a 1936 case, and people might be thinking to themselves, well, yeah, but that's old. No, it's actually not. This held as recently as 2013. This precedent is a strong precedent, and it falls under the non-delegation doctrine of the Constitution. Essentially, Congress cannot delegate authority to a private entity, and there's a reason. Listen to this. The Carter case held that a private entity, quote, may not be entrusted with the power to regulate the business of another, and especially a competitor. That's me. That's what Facebook, Google, Twitter, that's what all of them are doing to us. We are their competitors.
Right.
We are the businesses. We are the people. And they're interfering with our liberty and property. And it
Yes.
says, any statute which attempts to confer such power undertakes an intolerable and unconstitutional interference with personal property and liberty. Sorry, with personal liberty and personal and private property.
Sure.
The delegation is so arbitrary and a denial of due process. Because what happens is that if they can restrict our liberty and property, and the government's protecting them from doing so, it ultimately is arbitrary. What is hate speech? What is clickbait? What are all these terms that have really no definition? Not only that, but even the language of the law says whatever the provider considers is by definition discretionary. It's arbitrary. And there are certain guidelines that come with this type of protection, right? Because they've essentially got agency or commission power, just like the FTC, SEC, IRS, all of them. The government said, we'll protect you to do this job for us. And those agencies are subject to scope of review. The APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, it says you can only do certain things because all of these agencies are subject to specific scrutiny, congressional oversight. You know, that Congress is the one that's supposed to set the objective guidelines. Private entities, it does not exist. And because of that, here they are restricting our liberties, our property, and the government's protecting them. I can't do a damn thing about it because I can't get a day in court. They can't do that.
Right.
So this is our next step. We have decided, as you said, I formed the Social Media Freedom Foundation. We actually have the strategic advantage in this one because I have the unique position that I have standing to go after the government because the government directly harmed me. They denied me my day in court. And matter of fact, actually, with that flag, you can scan the upper portion of the flag, and that will take you right to the site. But I am doing this as an individual. I'm not doing this as I'm not a politician. I'm not seeking fame. I am looking at this from the standpoint of what our future is going to be.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, whenever anything goes wrong in the world, right? Anything that's a problem, how do you get your message out? How do you fight back? How do you resolve problems? You share information. if they control the majority of the online shared information and they can filter out the ideas they don't want,
Right.
and they're protected by the US government to do so, they are restricting all of our liberty, all of our property. They can basically control the entire free market, everything that's said, and so forth. So the idea here is the Social Media Freedom Foundation is going to sue on behalf of all Americans, and we are going to bring a Fifth Amendment constitutional challenge. This is the right way to stop big tech, because everybody says, well, what if you lose? Well, it's not really a win or lose argument.
Right.
It's simply, if it's unconstitutional, you have to repeal it. And if it's constitutional, you need to explain how it's constitutional, which means we get essentially what's called a declaratory judgment, which would resolve most of the textual issues. One way or the other, we're going to force them to do something. They
Right.
can't just ignore this anymore,
No.
because they are literally destroying our country day by day.
Yeah.
And if we don't do something by 2022, we're in real trouble.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it with the elections. And I also want to talk about some of the universal misconceptions about Section 230's proper application. 1A, enabling free speech, and 2, the problems, court misrepresentation, and the unconstitutionality of it.
So one of the big misconceptions, as we said at the beginning, is that the First Amendment, they have a First Amendment right to do whatever they want to do. I'm sure you probably heard that before. Well,
Sure.
Somebody, and it was funny because it was somebody that was a proponent for this nonsense that they spit out there, and realize there are groups of people that want to confuse the public. They come out there and they attack you if you deviate from their path. Okay. I've just learned to tune it out, but I do listen to the arguments to try and see if there's any validity. Well, they gave me an example one time. They said, if you walked into McDonald's and you started spitting out racial slurs, they can make you leave. It sounds right? It does sound
Sure.
like they can make you leave. But let me ask you, let's be technical about it. Can they make you leave? Technically.
Nowadays, I'm not so sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
But lawfully, can they make you? Can they force you to leave?
That's a good question.
Well, let me ask you, let me put it a different way. Can the cashier jump over the counter, put you in a headlock, drag you out of the building, and throw you into the street?
Are you asking me, can they, or if it's legal?
I'm asking you if that's a legal way to do it.
It
Yes,
better,
they could.
it better not be legal, or we're in big trouble.
No, it's not legal.
Exactly.
So if they want to get you out, what do? It's a very simple question. They call the cops, right?
Well, yeah. And nowadays, you see what's going on. The cops aren't responding to those kinds of calls anymore, because we have people walking into CVS or Drug Mart and taking everything out of the counters and walking out with bags, and nobody does anything.
Right. Well, if we stay on target for this analogy, right?
Sure.
A private entity cannot forcibly make you leave. They can deny you service. They can do a lot of different other things, but they can't make you leave.
Sure.
They have to call the cops. Who are the cops? They are the authorities. The authority has actually been granted to the police for enforcement, not to the private entity. And in fact, what would they then do? How would they, what law would they use to keep you out? Trespassing, right?
Sure.
Did McDonald's make that law, or did an elected official make that law?
I would say an elected official made that law.
Correct, because it is law. That is the situation that we have with Section 230 is Congress is the one that makes laws. They cannot delegate that power to anybody else. Well, people would say, well, that's not laws. It does have the power of law, because a private entity can set its own trespassing law, meaning they can set up whatever rule they want. Hey, we don't like green shirts when you come in here. Well, his shirt's green. Well, we like that green, but not your green. It becomes arbitrary. And then they can enforce it, meaning, oh, if I don't like your green, I'm going to come over that counter and I'm going to throw you out of the building. They can't do that.
Right.
That's the point of how a private entity has the authority to deny service. They can do what they want to do, but the government can't allow them to be the ones that set the rules and enforce the rules. It doesn't work like that. That's the problem we have with Section 230.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but
yeah.
that's the misconception, is that they can do anything they want, and they cannot do anything they want.
And by the way, that leads me to my next point on this, which there is no congressional oversight.
Correct.
So you make the laws, but then there's no oversight.
Correct.
So, that's conflicting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because essentially when a private entity would make the law, or let's go back to really what the power is. The FCC has the same essential power. We're not saying everything, because they can fine you and do other things that they can't normally do. But the FCC is a agency and commission. So what does the FCC have to do? Well, they're subject to the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, right? They have oversight. There is a scope of review. Did what they do, and they took away your liberty or your property. They fined the FCC, or the Fox network at one point. There was a Fox versus FCC case. Whatever they did, you can seek legal redress, correct? You can go to court and fight it.
Yes.
Here, you can't fight it. That has to exist. And without the congressional oversight, and without the scope of review, the APA, a private entity simply can't have that power. It's under the non-delegation. It defies the due process rights that we all have.
Makes sense. Socialmediafreedom.org is the site. Make sure that you go to that. Again, socialmediafreedom.org. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Jason Fyk.
Exposure to heavy metals is a major issue that affects everyone. They're everywhere, including our air, food, and water, and have been scientifically linked to many serious health conditions. Unfortunately, we do not have an effective mechanism to remove them from our bodies. Detoxicream is a revolutionary product that helps safely and effectively remove heavy metals. It's easy to apply and safe for all ages.
We're back with Jason Fyk. And by the way, in relation to ClearLife, you can go to indivisibleevents.us and put in the promo code Indivisible, and you can get up to at least $5 off on your ClearLife products for any metals that are in your skin. And that is for our Back the Blue and our military and our first responders. Again, Jason, I want to talk about private entities cannot be delegated regulatory authority. Again, that's Carter v. Carter, the Cole quote, due process issue, denial of liberty and property.
Yeah, we are going to do. I mean, obviously, we're going to do something about it. This is a much clearer path than a First Amendment. As much as I want Donald Trump to win his case against big tech, we are completely going the opposite end of the spectrum, because his case relies on that their state act. We're saying no, they are actually a private entity with agency power. And the problem with that agency power is that can't actually be granted to a private entity, because it is arbitrary. It is capricious. There is no measure of measurable bounds in the regulations. They can do whatever they want. There's no uniformity. The rules don't have to be in the interest of the public. All of these things are things that an agency would have to abide by. In fact, the FCC can't even have a foreigner. It has to be a U.S. citizen that has to work there, because, for example, I mean, think about the dangers of this. You have foreigners fact-checking our election content.
Right.
That's just, are you serious?
It's absurd.
And the U.S. government is allowing them under protection of law to do so.
Yeah, but yet there's no congressional oversight, right?
Right. There's none.
It doesn't match.
Right. So, I'm the average guy. Like, I didn't pursue any of the political world or anything else like that. I didn't even pick this. I didn't choose this. Facebook decided to poke a bear. But I am relentless. Like, it's one of those. No, I know I'm right. Like, I'm 100% right. I don't care who says I'm wrong. I'll come out there and I'll debate them heads up. And if it's a one-on-one, I'll smoke them. Like, everything
Right.
about Section 230 that everybody understands, most of it's wrong. And we are about to challenge all of it. How? So my case isn't about suing big tech anymore. My case is now turning its sights on the U.S. government and saying, hey, look, you denied me a day in court for a private entity regulating my liberty and my speech and my property, and I didn't get any redress. I couldn't do anything about it. So That's what the Social Media Freedom Foundation was made for. We need your help. I cannot do this alone. I do not have the I mean, this has really been the burdens on me, but now it's, if you want to protect your own speech, if you're sick of them shutting you up, if you want to protect America, this is how we do it. This is the most logical way to solve and break Section 230's grip and break big tech's grip. This is the way.
Yeah,
Help me out.
I don't know if you guys got to hear my opening when I had introduced Jason at the beginning after Gordon, but in my eyes, Jason is the foremost expert on this subject. So if we're dealing with Section 230 or censorship or anything having to do with Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, censoring anybody, shadow banning anybody, I'm coming to Jason because I know Jason knows what's going on with this, and he's actively out there getting something done for you, the American people, for me, for himself, for all of us. He's out there fighting for all of us. And I've been scrolling at the bottom. Again, I want to stress this because if we don't do anything, then you're going to wonder, well, what happened? And people are going to be, oh, well, we should have done something. No, this isn't one of those things you sit back and wait on. Socialmediafreedom.org. I want you to go there now, contribute, get involved. It's important for all of us to keep our freedom. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, because eventually they'll eat their own on the Democrat side as well. This is not just Republicans. This is not just independents. This is not just people. It's not even just people that are unpolitical. This is everyone. This is all speech. And when they can shut that down, they can shut you down. And then what? What are you going to do with your business? What are you going to do with even your family? What if you're just trying to communicate with your family and you say something in a post with some photos that they don't like and they decide to take that down? Or if it's your highly held religious beliefs or your business, like I said, it doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter to anybody out there what the reason is. We should all want free speech, right?
Yeah, in a market where you really can only survive if you have a presence on social media, and you have social media companies that can delete you in an instant without any kind of way to solve it. We have figured out the strategic advantage. We know how to solve this now. And I have the standing to solve this now. I need the resources. I need the supply chain. Anybody in the military understands this. You can have the strategic advantage, but if you do not have the supply chain, you cannot maintain a sustained fight.
Absolutely.
That is what I need to do. Is I have to keep going here. I've thrown everything I can at this thing. Now, do you want to stop social media?
Do you really?
Go to socialmediafreedom.org and show that you do, because that's what we need right now. We need your help.
That's a great question. That's a great question, Jason. And this is to the American people. Do you really want this to stop? Do you really? The question is on you, because if you say that you do, so let's see it, because it's now or never as far as I'm concerned. And Jason, he needs the help. Look, we've got to be able to do something here to stop this. And by the way, you had an attorney endorsement here, says this is one of the first Section 230 challenges that may actually have a chance, right? The law is definitely unconstitutional as it's applied. The key is ensuring the arguments are done well. I pray that Jason, and this guy says, gets a good attorney and gets this and hits this right.
That's why we need everybody's support. We're going to do it either way.
Right.
But with the resources, we can do it with such power.
Amen.
That's what we need. We need this done correctly, and we need it done to solve the problem, and that's why I need your help. I need to get lots more attorneys involved in this. We have a real opportunity to stop big tech here.
Yeah, and I want to go back to this again. This is 47 U.S. Code 230, protection for private blocking and screening of offensive material. Okay? Again.
It says it right there.
It says
private
it right
companies
there.
are protected restrict your material by blocking and screening your material, your private property, what you choose to post.
That's
They
right.
can't do that.
That's right. And again, people, I plead with you, go to socialmediafreedom.org, socialmediafreedom.org, and get involved. Jason, look, I want to give you the floor these last couple minutes and tell the American people what it is you want them to know from your heart.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been hurt by social media. I've watched everybody else get hurt around me, and I've watched everybody catch up to the fact that they're going to come for you, inevitably. And by the time they do and they take your voice, is that when you're going to speak up?
Right.
And that's what I've been saying to a lot of people. And as I'm watching them, they're being taken down left and right. And it's like, oh, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to get in trouble. Now I'm gone. And I'm like, great. Now you can't reach anybody. Now you can't do anything. I have done nothing but work at the actual problem. I've dealt with the ridicule. Don't really care about it anymore. I know we're right. I've got other attorneys now telling we're right. And I would say this. If you don't understand, if you watch this entire episode, and this is just like way up here and not understanding it, go to socialmediafreedom.org. There is an article in there. There's an article in there that says Section 230 of the CDA is anything but settled law. It is a longer article, but that's just it. Educate yourselves. Understand how this works. I break it down all the way back to the original. And for your audience, do you know what the original commission was? The U.S. Postal Service. It's the only one that's actually in the Constitution, and they granted them the regulatory power. And you know what? They had an articulated and intelligible principle as well. The Universal Service Doctrine, meaning they give everybody mail at the same price everywhere in the continental United States, and that was what they had to do. It. Well, that's what Good Samaritan is for Section 230. They need to start acting as Good Samaritans instead of for their own benefit or for political gain or for financial gain. We can stop them. I need your help.
Yes. Jason, it was a pleasure having you, brother. And look, I fully support what you're doing, and I am on board 100% to help in any way that I can. And I believe that our audience will do the same. This is imperative, America. We have to do this. And if we don't do it now, then when? Because the fight is at hand now. And we're in the trenches on this thing right now. So in my book, it's put up or shut up time. If you really say that you care about having, free speech and your rights not being violated, and again, there's no congressional oversight on this. Okay, we have to force these people to make the change, to get this done so that your rights are not violated, so that we can move on with this not being an issue. And again, there's nobody I would turn to other than Jason Fyk, who is the foremost expert on this subject. And he's leading the charge. And Jason, we're grateful to you, and we owe you a huge debt, man.
Well, America has done good things for me. I'm just fighting for it.
Well, God bless you, brother. And thanks for coming on the show. Looking forward to having you back to get updates on this and find out where we are with the case.
All right. Thank you, John.
God bless. Have a good afternoon, Jason. That was an amazing show. We had Gordon Chang. We had Jason Fyk. We covered China. Lots of different things going on in China. Obviously, we have to keep our eyeballs on that. And then, obviously, with Section 230 with Jason Fyk, that's as big as it gets. It's as big as your gun rights. It's as big as anything in the Constitution. And these are the kinds of things that, if you care about America, if you really believe in your rights, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe on why this country was built in the first place, then it's time to get involved, folks, because again, this might be your last chance. And it's now or never. It's put up or shut up time. We'll see you next time on Indivisible John Stubbins. God bless you, and God bless America.